So in this video, I'm going to be talking about something that is very interesting. Look, I like to try and listen to people on the other side, listen to different opinions of my own and beliefs as much as I can and learn from it, because I think a lot of what's wrong in the world currently is that polarization of politics and the way we view things. I'm right, you're wrong, you're bad, I'm good. And it comes from both sides. And so when there's an opportunity to listen to someone of a differentiating opinion as your own, you kind of got to take that opportunity. And I did. And that's what we're going to explore in this video. Let's dive in. Welcome to Hakuna MaChatter, your place for everything positive in diversity and representation in film and TV. If you're new here to the channel, my name is Elliot. Please consider subscribing and dropping this video with a like. So a couple of weeks back, I dropped a video talking about 4 books on race that I've read and really enjoyed and that help inform a lot of my beliefs just in life and here on the channel. And on Instagram, I was contacted by an author, not one of the authors of the books, unfortunately, being like, hey, thanks for giving me a shout out, but an author who has written a rebuttal to one of the books that I was talking about. Now, the book that I was talking about was Rennie Edalodge's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. And after posting a short clip of that video onto Instagram, I was contacted by an author named Oliver Gemmell, a UK author who has written the rebuttal to Rennie Edalodge's book, and his book is called Why I'm No Longer Talking to Black People About Race and George Floyd. So I'm pretty sure that you can guess how I felt when I was contacted by an author who wrote a book like that, in particular a white author. And he asked that I read his book, that I take a look into it, as he described it as a more concise look into racism in the US. Now, I kind of found that a bit weird at first. For starters, that he put racism in inverted commas, because actually in the book itself he doesn't deny that racism is a thing. You know, he states that it very much is a thing and that people very much do experience it. So kind of felt weird that when writing to me he did that. Anyway, but I kind of find it weird that he's written a rebuttal to Rennie Edalodge, right, but he is writing about racism within the US when Rennie wrote about racism within the UK. So I don't quite understand how that works as a rebuttal already when you're talking about 2 completely different subjects. Even though racism as a whole is a very universally experienced thing, there are vast differences to how it appears in the US compared to how it appears in the UK. He asked that I have a read of his book, and I said, yeah, sure, I'll take a read. Actually, if you have a press copy of it, I will take a read and I will talk about it on the channel, which is what I'm doing right now. I wanted to go into it, you know, kind of honest, kind of, you know, keeping a neutral cap on and trying to really understand from Oliver's point of view about race and how he views it and how he views it in the US. Yeah, the first 5 minutes, 'cause I listened to it on Audible, the first 5 minutes listening to this book, I'm very sorry, but there was no way I could keep honest and neutral about it, because, well, I can keep honest. I'm definitely going to keep honest, but there's no way I could keep neutral about it. There's no way I could kind of try, I don't know, well, no, it's not that there's no way I could try to understand, because I just didn't understand. I can't lie. And I think it boils down to a lot of things, and it is the way in which the facts and opinions are presented by Oliver in this book. And I think there's a lot to be said with how you put a point across, and I think this book, in trying to put the point across that it is up to black people and other minoritized race people to stop their oppression and to stop feeling that everything is racist, it just actually came across as more racist. And I'm sure I'm falling into the trap of what Oliver's trying to write down, but I at the same time, I just don't think that I am. I think the issue with the book is that it's riddled throughout the whole with sweeping generalizations, and when you try and decide that everything the way it is by forcing everyone into one box, it just doesn't make sense. I'll go into a few smaller details. I think, you know, look, there's one chapter where Oliver, it's called Facts, and he presents us with statistics and facts. And the issue with this chapter is, and this is something that kind of goes throughout the whole book, is there's no context, there's no explanation, there's no introspection, there's no, you know, just kind of, this is the fact and that's it, it must be true. And I mean, maybe so when it comes to statistics and whatnot, you know, provided you're pulling from a reliable source, which his source he pulled from was Candace Owen, so You decide if that's a reliable source or not. For me, definitely not. However, when you just present the numbers as they are, without the context, without looking into why that is, without, and especially if you're writing a book that is a rebuttal, and bear in mind that Renier Lodge's book on Audible is 5.5 hours, Oliver's is 1.5 hours. And I think that says a lot already. It shows personally for me how much more Renier Lodge delves, not just states things, but examines it and cross-examines it and opens it up a bit more. And I just feel that Oliver really failed to do this. You know, let's say he presents a fact that, I'm pulling the number out of my head, but 95% of black people are killed by other black people. And it's like, this could be true, but why is that true? And without exploring that why, yeah, you can state that number and it's like, oh yeah, then black on black violence and black on black crime, this, that and the other, and which is already a dangerous topic to just delve right in when you don't consider the crime of other races as well. And and you don't look into the proportionality of that either. You just state that one fact. That's why you can't just present a fact like that without delving into it and examining why and where that's coming from. And so it was a shame actually that Oliver didn't do that. And the same then goes throughout the whole book as well. And just these, the main reason people were protesting last year in 2020 after the murder of George Floyd was because they wanted to look good on social media. Maybe a few people were doing that. That's, yeah, I can accept that. I'm sure a few people definitely did that. But to just say that particularly pointing the finger at Gen Zers, that they were only doing it to look good on social media. It's just, when you just put in sweeping generalizations in that without examining, or giving any evidence, saying that James and Sarah posted this picture with this caption and hashtags, they were clearly only there for the fun of it. It just didn't swim the right way with me. Another pinpoint to bring out was saying that the reason black people voted for Obama was because he was black. And maybe again some of that is true, but to say that all of them did that, I think is wrong. And what I want to say to that is that here in the UK we had local elections recently, and in London we were voting for a new mayor, and one of the main candidates, Sean Bailey, was black. Now I could have voted for him because he was black, but I didn't. Why? Well, because he's a conservative, and that's just completely against my politics. So I think when you just say you only vote for someone because of the colour of their skin is different. I think the reason black people voted for Obama more deeply is that they finally saw someone that represented them. And it's not just because he's black, but it's because of the experiences he would have gone through will be similar. And it's more that the experiences he had are because he's black, not he is black. Do you get what I mean? They didn't vote for him because he's black. They voted him because of the experiences he had would have been akin to theirs, and so he represented them better. I don't know, and maybe it was just his policies. Maybe they actually read his policies and went, his policies are better than, who's he up against, McCain was it the first time, are better than his policies. There are many other reasons as to why people vote who they vote for, not just because of the colour of their skin. And yeah, now look, there are so many more things. I didn't want this to be a video where I kind of nitpicked loads of different points, because it wasn't just a case of me liking some things and not liking other things. It was a case that I just didn't like the book on whole. I didn't like that that it was just, this is what I think, and so that's all that matters, and that's true, and that's the case. And there are more people that think like me, so it must be true. And I think that's where Oliver came from. He wasn't presenting anything new. He was presenting, in my opinion, at the very least, he was just presenting his opinions, or maybe he was just presenting the opinions of other people so that he could sell a few books. That's just the way it came across to me, and I didn't like it. I didn't like that at all. There was actually one thing else that I want to talk about, and it was his chapter on blackface, because I think, the blackface, that somehow it stays in circulation, the talking about what is and what isn't, and when can you do it and when can't you do it. The answer is you can't do it. No one can. Not just white people, but people that, just any race that is not black. And it's the same for a black person yellow facing, and really, I guess really the same for a black person white facing as well. Not that that's ever really been done. And people will say white chicks, but White Chicks explains it's not the actor white facing, it's the character white facing. So, the same in which with Tropic Thunder, it's not Robert Downey Jr. black facing, it's his character black facing. Context, I think, is important there. Basically, what he's saying in his chapter of blackfacing is that blackfacing isn't racist, it's showing an appreciation to your idols, in the sense that you would probably dress up for them as a Halloween costume or a fancy dress, etc, etc. Now obviously there's a lot of discourse around fancy dress and around Halloween costuming, and, you know, costuming as people from different cultures and races, and is that appropriation, is that not appropriation? So it's a more nuanced discussion than just than just idolizing celebrities. I think, you know, to just say it's just that, I think that comes across as a more personal thing than an actual stated thing within society, especially when you look at the history of blackfacing, because this is another thing the book fails to do. It fails to acknowledge any of the history, to acknowledge why things might be because of how they've been set up in the past. History is such an important thing. At school, I hated history. I thought it was really boring, but now history, I'm like, give me all the history I can take on. And I think when you are discussing things like race and racism, taking the history and seeing how that has informed present day is really important. And that's so important for blackface as well, because the reason blackface came in was so that white filmmakers or entertainers could profit off of black people without actually having them in the films and actually paying them a wage and using them as actual humans. And when black people were present in any films or entertainment, they were used as to depict animals and to be animalistic and not animalistic in a cool and, I don't know, maybe even sensual way, but animalistic in a disgusting and horrid and, oh, this is, you know, they are inferior to us kind of way. You know, you look at films, I mean, like Birth of a Nation. If Birth of a Nation doesn't tell you why blackfacing is wrong, I don't know what does. A friend of mine on Instagram, literally the morning of recording this video, shared on his Instagram, I think it was Judy Garland performing on stage in blackface. And that is a classic example of white people profiteering off of the look of black people without crediting them, without actually giving them the stage and the platform to exhibit what they can do, because as it was seen back then, they are an inferior race and don't deserve that. If you don't address the history of things like that, you come off as racist and you come off as very ignorant to what has come before. While I'm on that, there was another statement in the book that poor people, and this isn't just to black people, he generalized this to any race, but that poor people are poor because they don't value education and working their way up. When you particularly look at the US and you look at poor black neighborhoods, you know, there was a thing in history called red ring fencing, right? And so those areas, the areas where black people then lived, were underfunded, were downtrodden neighborhoods, schools were underfunded. So to say that they don't value education is incorrect, because sometimes just the school isn't being funded by the government to give them the education equal to that of their peers from other races. So there's a lot in this book that is wrong. In fact, near enough the entirety of the book, to be honest. Look, thanks Oliver for reaching out and giving me this opportunity to read from a different point of view, to try and understand a different point of view. I do very much appreciate that, but you're way off on this one, mate, and good luck.